Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Gee, somebody get that poor guy out of the box he's in. Actually, that's Alex Gordon, one of the great reporters and writers for Pittsburgh City Paper. And I know that audio sounds bizarre. I have been told that while I am on vacation, which is next week, City Paper is bringing in some kind of audio engineer person. And I am hoping, fingers crossed, that when I return, maybe all these issues that have plagued us for years and years and years will be resolved. But I remain a skeptic just by virtue of the history. I'd like to, I wanted to talk about this yesterday, but because Susan was on, I didn't want to force her into a conversation that she didn't know anything about, and because it's a local story, but it's a wonderfully it's a wonderfully gossipy kind of local story that I have not addressed yet, and we will do so today. It has to do with something that happened at the Pittsburgh Post Gazette on Saturday night, to be exact. There were probably about 15 staffers. I mean, newspapers, you got people working 24/7. There were 15 people hard at work. It was a little bit after 10 p.m. And into the newsroom, according to multiple sources, storms the owner and publisher of the newspaper. Actually, his total, I think he's called publisher and editor-in-chief, John R. Block. He storms into the newsroom, accompanied by his young child. I don't know the gender of the child, and I don't know the exact age, except the child is a preteen, so young child. And according to various accounts of the stunned people who were in the newsroom, J.R. Block was essentially went berserk. He seemed irrational. He was screaming and yelling at the staffers. There's a bulletin board in the newsroom that is the purview of the union for the reporters, the guild, the newspaper guild. Excuse me. And it had the thing that was driving him crazy was a sign that had been posted on the board, which said, shame on the blocks. And that was there because of the union's anger at the Post-Gazette's refusal to apparently pay an increase that occurred in their health care coverage. Not exactly sure about that, but these two have been in negotiations for a new contract for an incredibly long time. The Post-Gazette management has been found by the National Labor Relations Board and by a administrative law judge, I believe, of being in the wrong, and that doesn't change anything because, of course, all Block Communications does is then kick it up another level, appeals the decisions. So the frustration for the beleaguered workers there is extraordinary. And the financial hit they have been taking for years is incredible. So to put up this thing, shame on the blocks, it's their property in the newsroom. He went berserk. He reportedly kept slamming it with his hand, saying that he'd spent millions of dollars on you people, that they were sending him, into decline. He kept wanting to apparently force the child into standing in front of the poster, and he would take a picture. Now, again, he was crazed. He was going to take a picture of the child in front of the poster, and he was going to print it on the front page of the paper. As far as I know, no picture was taken. People there say that staffers there actually sort of grabbed the kid to get the kid away from him. Because, well, let me see. The people that were there immediately called their union reps, Michael Fuoco and Jonathan Silver, both very good reporters for the paper. They both came running over, and so we're there for some of this. Newsroom managers were comforting the child. Somehow they managed to get Block isolated, according to the account. He had come from the Duquesne Club, that storied club for very, very rich and powerful people in Pittsburgh, where he had dinner, apparently, with this poor child. And probably he'd been drinking a lot. So he ends up there. The Guild has said since it happened, they're sorry that they didn't call the police, that ideally the police should have been called. They are since asking the executives of the paper, I mean, of which Block is the main one, but they're asking others to literally block Block from coming into the building, and that in fact he should be searched for weapons if he comes into the building, because some of the newsroom employees are now saying they're frightened, and they have been given the option of working from home, which some of them have happily agreed to do. Subscribers to the Post Gazette, of course, are not going to be seeing any of this, I guess, right? I mean, in my quick perusals of the digital issue, I have not seen anything, and I can't imagine that there would be. But these accounts of his going berserk were myriad from all the people that were there who said the reason they think nobody called the police is they were simply in a state of stunned, sort of paralyzed astonishment at seeing the owner, the boss, the editor, the publisher, frankly abusing his child like this in front of them, terrifying the child, terrifying everybody in the room. This guy's got a twin, Allen, who is actually the chairman of what's called Block Communications, Inc., which owns the Post Gazette and the Toledo Blade. And Allen Block does not dispute that something happened Saturday night, but said that his twin brother's conduct was misinterpreted by those present. And he sent this statement to the Incline, which first reported this, saying this: "The frustration over financial and other challenges in the newspaper industry led to an unfortunate exchange with employees, of which I have been made aware. Block Communications regrets if anyone present may have misconstrued what occurred as anything other than an indication of strong concern and support for the legacy and future of the Post Gazette. We want the entire staff to know that we will continue to value all of our employees and their contributions to the PG while depriving them of wages, a safe working environment. I'm sorry, I'm adding that part. So that's what it was. That's what happened. He said he criticized the union during his berserk rant of trying to take money out of my family's pockets. He was threatening various managers in the newsroom. He was threatening, I'll shut down this goddamn paper if the sign is not removed. The sign, by the way, is not removed. So there's that. Kristen has just sent me something from Two Political Junkies, great blog on this. There has been some new news regarding the behavior of John Robinson Block this past weekend. But first, an answer to one of my questions from my previous posting. I had asked, this is the blog asking, if Block and the preteen were, quote, sent on their way in an Uber, then how did they get from the Duquesne Club to the Post Gazette? And why couldn't they just leave the same way? Well, my guess is that he drove drunk over from the Duquesne Club with his kid in the car, and then the people that ushered him out didn't want him driving with the kid. It goes on to say Block was indeed drunk. Another astute reader emailed me Jonathan Silver's letter to the members of the guild. Here are some excerpts. Around 10 p.m., Block brought his daughter, to the North Shore after having dinner with her at the Duquesne Club. He apparently wanted to force her to have her picture taken in front of the Shame on the Blocks sign. His stated goal was to have the picture published on our front page. Block ranted about the sign and how its sentiment is now part of the family's legacy. He lamented the several $100 million he said the Blocks have lost on the PG over the years and criticized the guild for trying to take money out of the family's pockets. He also made comments that distinguish between wealthy people like him and the working class, namely us. Okay. And this is from additional reporting from WESA, the FM station. The newspaper company, that's the Blocks, agreed to pay healthcare premium increases of up to 5% per year in the contract that expired in 2017. Federal labor law requires companies to maintain current pay and benefits during contract negotiations, which have been ongoing for the last 21 months. Healthcare costs went up 5% in 2018, which the company did not pay, and told unions that it had no plans to pay the additional 5% increase in 2019. So that is how, understandably, the National Labor Relations Board and an administrative law judge said, hey, Blocks, you are in violation of the contract that you signed. Here's what else Jonathan Silver said. After a time, Sally and Steve, obviously people that were there, were able to isolate John in the Crystal Palace. Who knows what that means? Some place in there. Calm him down and comfort his terrorized daughter. the most unfortunate and innocent victim in all of this. Much credit goes to night web editor Marianne Mizera, who kept her head and, along with Tim, did what she could to intervene on behalf of the terrified child, who was understandably beyond distressed about her father's bizarre and menacing behavior. Block wrestled the girl's phone away so she could not contact her mother, who was said to be out of town, and tried to manhandle her into posing for a picture in front of the sign as she was crying, protesting, and pleading. By the way, the Crystal Palace, where they stuck him, is the in-house name for the boardroom, where editorial meetings take place. And at certain point, the father and daughter were loaded into an Uber and sent on their way. So I don't know how, terrorizing this child is in a drunken rant is, according to the blocks, is a an indication of the strong concern and support for the legacy and future of the Post Gazette. I would suggest the future of the Post Gazette has been incredibly harmed by the blocks themselves, and J.R. Block in particular, who has chased many people who've subscribed to his paper for decades. I include myself, who was a almost 40-year subscriber, to cancel my subscription. So that's part of what's happening here in on the journalism scene. I truly feel for the people left working there. I feel for them in many, many ways. I feel for his poor daughter. I do not feel for him. Now, interestingly, the New York Times today did a piece on how the Washington Post is handling the fact that their publisher and owner is a big, salacious news story, too. And it's very difficult when, the owner of your paper is a big news story, and you have to cover it. And the Times did a piece about it, and mentioned the word that Bezos himself had coined, saying that buying the Washington Post was a complexifier for his life. And the Times says, well, yeah, but the newspaper could say the same thing about him being the owner. It has certainly complexified their journalistic duties. I do want to say this about Bezos, who I have no love for, that since he did buy the Post, unlike the blocks, he has figured out how to, in fact, make it more profitable. Unlike almost every newspaper I know of, he did not lay off anybody. In fact, he has, in his 5-year tenure there as owner, he has added more than 200 people to the newsroom staff, and the paper has been profitable for the past 3 years, which is a true feather in his hat. This is a time when newspapers are dying everywhere, and the Post is going in the other direction under Bezos, which is you give the devil his due. And his editorial people now are just everybody insists there that he has never interfered with any editorial coverage at all. He has there's a firewall, and he has maintained that during this fight about the pecker picks with the pecker guy at the Inquirer. As if things aren't, crazy enough in journalism. There was a story I read, and I'm sorry I can't think of the name of these despicable capitalists. There, by the way, are good capitalists. My dad was one. They are there. They are out there. But there is, probably a hedge fund or something that is buying up newspapers left and right and then destroying them. They buy them, and the article was fascinating because they're totally not interested in journalism and or the value of journalism. They're buying up newspapers, big ones too, including I think the Denver Post, I think is the latest. And then they eviscerate the place. I use the right word. They eviscerate it. And hundreds lose their jobs. The paper ends up pretty much spiraling downward and eventually sort of whimpers to an end. They buy the papers for the real estate. This is what the article was about. For the buildings these papers have, for the printing facilities. They buy them for the real estate and then turn around. There was one instance, and I can't remember which city it was, where they buy the paper, destroy the paper, sell this building that the paper had been in, some historic old building, to somebody who then turns around and sells it for twice as much like a day later. I don't know. These are vultures. This is capitalistic vultures feeding off American journalism, print journalism, and taking with them not only money, but a bulwark of democracy. Because the people that are being thrown out onto the streets and the papers that are going down means that the people in those communities will no longer be informed about what the powerful are doing. It truly is a crisis. I mean, it's a crisis of our democracy. It's a crisis of our, I don't know. I'm sorry. And then, as if that isn't bad enough, they're hiring robots. Bloomberg News. Listen to this. Roughly a third of the content published by Bloomberg News comes out of some form of AI, artificial intelligence, automated technology, whatever you want to call it. The system that Bloomberg News uses is called, not surprisingly, Cyborg. And it can help a reporter by doing sort of, the kinds of tasks that often take up a great deal of their time. That so it can do some, hunting and gathering work that could then help a real reporter write a story. But more and more, these articles, these machine-written articles are becoming, they're not unusual anymore. AI in a newsroom can now dissect a financial report the moment it appears and spit out an immediate news story that bypasses all human beings, a news story that includes the most pertinent facts and figures. No human need be involved. And unlike business reporters who find working on this kind of thing boring, it does so without complaint. Every time you hear a story about artificial intelligence, robots, whatever, coming in and taking jobs that have sustained families in our country, we're always getting that for the employers, they love these robots or programs because unlike humans, they don't complain. They don't get sick. Well, yes, they do, but they don't have to take paid vacations. They're cheaper. They're easier to deal with than humans. Humans are just troublesome. And, you know, if you don't have to deal with them, why the hell would you? So increasingly, the jobs that human beings have are just disappearing. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to get my news from a robot. Last week, The Guardian, which is a good newspaper, its Australia edition, published its first machine-assisted article, which was a real news story, an account of political donations to Australia's political parties. And Forbes recently announced that it is testing some kind of a program that will allow them not to hire as many human beings, reporters. Little Tony writes, Lynn, the situation with the Post Gazette blows my mind. The sad thing is it shows the shaky ground it's on. Well, it is. I mean, it would be on shaky ground if it was not in the clutches of this drunken, deranged Trump lover. I feel so bad, says Tony, for the good people that work there. God only knows what's going to happen next. I wonder if Block feels any shame. Look. Thank you, Milton, as usual. What I was talking about, these despicable people that are destroying newspapers all over the country, called Alden Global Capital and Fortress Investment. The thing about the article, it got very complicated. They have a number of, someone comes in and buys this, sells off to that one. So it sort of becomes hard to trace what they're up to. There was, in the piece, there was something about a paper in the eastern part of Pennsylvania that was destroyed by them. They came in. Yeah, okay, they Alden Global is behind the Denver Post, which has now, staff has shrunk by more than 50%. They've got the Florida Times-Union in Jacksonville. They've got, in this one paper in eastern Pennsylvania, and I forget exactly what, they shrunk this paper down little by little by little to the point where after they sold the building out from under them, and there's still like 5 reporters left or something, and they were working out of some kind of like an abandoned bowling alley or something, an abandoned car dealer. Something like that. And this is an article that I've been sent from Bloomberg News. And for all I know, this article that's decrying what's going on with all these journalists losing their jobs because of these capitalist raiders. And it turns out this article, for all we know, could have been written by a machine. It wasn't, actually. I've told this story a million times, and I'll tell it one more. When I first came here as a reporter, TV reporter, I was sent to do a story at Carnegie Mellon. So this is like 1981. And I was sent to do a story on this new robot that they had created, which was going to be delivering inter-office mail. And I was very disappointed because the robot looked like a table on wheels with slots and stuff, and it just maneuvered its way in around the building and stopping at desks and giving people mail and memos. I was thinking, robot. But I remember asking the proud scientist whose work it was, well, why is this so great, since I'm assuming there's a human being whose job it's been to deliver the mail? What happens to that person? I mean, what happens to the people who all of these gizmos are going to replace? And he didn't even blink. I mean, he said, oh, no. What we're doing here is we are going to create new jobs for people. The jobs the robots will be doing are the jobs that are, boring, interesting, repetitive, and people will be able to, build the robots, repair the robots. And I remember thinking, this doesn't make any sense to me. Because this is some smart cookie who invented a robot, and he doesn't realize that not every human being is a rocket scientist or a robot developer, that there are human beings who need work and are quite willing to be the person who takes the mail around. This idea that we're all of a sudden geniuses who are going to know how to repair and build and service robots, bull. So the thing about, and here's the headline, by the way, on this Bloomberg article: the hard truth at newspapers across America, hedge funds are in charge. And hedge funds don't give a hoot about your right to know about the importance of journalism to a community, to a democracy. As I said, they're just cashing in or cashing out. That's all. They're vultures. They see a wounded thing, in this case, an institution important to democracy, and they lick their chops and say, ooh, carrion. Something for us to feast on and get richer with. God. This is why we need art. This is why you have to head over to the August Wilson Center. Coming up this weekend, Felipe Luciano. And Felipe is a journalist, a poet, a writer, an activist, a lecturer. And he is a giant among Latino figures in this country. For decades and decades and decades, he has argued and organized for social justice with great passion. He speaks in detail about the dichotomy of his Afro-Puerto Rican heritage and his journey from a prison cell to television and to film. This is a fascinating, powerful, passionate human being, a social justice warrior. And I would think in my audience there would be plenty of people who would want to soak what he has to say in. He is at the August Wilson Cultural Center the 16th, which is 3 days from now, which would be Saturday. Check it out. Felipe Luciano. If you don't know him, here's an opportunity to broaden your horizons and to open up your head. Try it. You know, I, like many of you, my default position is inertia. Hard to get me up and out. But as I've said in the last few days, whenever I do push myself up and out the door, I am 99% of the time so grateful to myself and need to remind myself from time to time that invariably that's how I feel. Okay, so that's the depressing journalism news of the day. I want to say that I have been thinking, I have thoughts in my head all the time, and some of them recur every once in a while, which leads me sometimes to get over my inertia and actually write down on a note that I keep having this thought so that maybe I can share it with you, and I finally got one. And this has to do with the fact that I understand that in elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, there are these active shooter drills now, right? Because we live in a country where, of course, and it doesn't happen anywhere else, we live in a country where there's a possibility that, yes, some deranged person with armed to the teeth with weapons of war can come into a school and mow down children. And this has been happening for years and years and years, and we as a people have done nothing. We've done things like, and now we will hold active shooter drills every month so that when these terrorizing things happen, the children will know how to act. Well, I have to tell you, when I think of my child when he was in kindergarten, in first grade, second grade, the idea of him being subjected to an active shooter drill or whatever they call it, a lockdown drill, I would not want, to me, that is the drill is an assault on him as a child. It's an assault on children. And then I'd start asking, well, what really, even though the odds are greater that a child in this country is going to die in a school shooting, greater than anywhere else in the world, what really are the odds? So is it necessary for the schools then to get ready in case they are terrorized in this way, to then terrorize the children with the possibility that they'll be terrorized this way? Have we heard from psychologists about what the preparedness for having a lunatic with an AK-47 come into your class, what the preparedness drills do to children? My sense has always been that a child needs, more than anything, a sense of security. It wouldn't make me feel secure to be reminded that some crazy person can come in and I'm told to barricade myself somehow. I don't have a gun. I'm a kid. What am I supposed to do? what made me finally think about this again is I saw some woman on Twitter say that her daughter came home and on her arm, it was a young kid, came home and she had written on her arm in whatever, pen or, "I love you, Mommy and Daddy." And she comes home, her mother sees it, and she says, "Oh, how nice, why did you put that on your arm?" And the answer was, "Well, we had this drill." And I thought, if that ever would happen, and I were killed, I would want you and Daddy to know that I loved you. I have no words. I have no words. Okay, now, staying local still, but with also, this is one of those things that I definitely wrote down myself.
All right, so tickets here at the front desk for BNY Mellon presents Romeo and Juliet, pressing manual acts at Heinz Hall Saturday the 16th at 8 o'clock. Whoever wants to come to the front desk.
Did you hear that? They got tickets for Emmanuel Acts at the giving away? I won't be here, but that seems pretty good. Ellen writes, Atlantic Magazine's current issue addresses this very topic. They talk about the psychological damage this can lead to in children. Well, yeah, duh! I don't know what I would do if my kid were young like that. Now, I wouldn't allow him to be there. If they did not tell me they were doing these drills on the day they do these drills, I would be enraged because I would not want my child subjected to this crap. Okay, this is nowhere near as serious, but it's just a little annoyance. As the roadways in Pittsburgh shrink, sometimes to a laughable degree, roads that used to have 4 lanes now have 2, and there's still space there, but it's been given over to bicyclists. And all right, I'll deal with it. But now there's something new happening, and I was going to ask you guys about it. And then someone on that app called Nextdoor, where people can talk to other people in their neighborhood, ask questions, sell stuff, whatever. I have that app. Somebody on the app posted the other day about the very thing I had wanted to bring up with you, and got such a response that I now have more information. It has to do with if you're driving in Pittsburgh and there's certain intersections. I make my way around the East End mostly because that's where I live. And all of a sudden at intersections, there are these ugly, I'd say about yay high poles that are put up to form a barrier of sort. The one that I deal with every day is at one of those typical crazed 5-way intersections in Pittsburgh, where Murray Avenue and Forward and I don't know what else that is, Hocusset come together right there where there's a get-go. Okay. And now, there's so much traffic there. And now, if you're making a left turn so that you can get onto the parkway to come to work, which I do drive some days. It's hard to make the turn because now these poles are encroaching onto the space that you used to have to make a turn. They're also at where Forbes Avenue heads into Shenley Park. There's a huge sort of space there where the golf course starts. And they've put these ugly white poles way out into the street. It's not a bike lane. I don't know what the hell it is. It's just taking part of the street away. A big part of the street away. And the woman who posted said, what the hell is that? What is going on? What are those? First of all, they're aesthetically awful, and they are. But they also if you're making a turn, you just got this little space. You don't have sort of the room you used to have. And it turns out that is what they're there for. They are there to force cars to travel on a very predictable, narrow path. They are called traffic delineators. Or one person called them bollards. And they're just the beginning of something, I don't understand why these things happen. And did the city explain this? They just do this in the dead of night, and then people are confused by them. I don't see in some of the intersections that I'm talking about how it could help anybody. Pedestrians, drivers, and or bikers, people on bicycles. I don't even understand what they're about. But it is an annoyance. And all of a sudden, drivers, we're becoming like cigarette smokers. We're being squeezed. We're being squeezed. Remember how I used to feel sorry for people who were standing outside shivering, smoking, and increasingly they couldn't even stand outside and smoke because they started being knocked off the sidewalks into little... I have to tell you, people who drive are going to end up in the same boat. Now, I understand that basically that's probably good to lessen the amount of driving going on, the amount of carbon being put into the air and all of that. But we're not all able to ride bikes. And public transit also is not the greatest. It's okay. But if you're an older person or a disabled person, I don't know. I know change is hard. I'm old. I'm grumpy. But I hate those things. I hate them mostly because they're ugly. They're ugly. And if you want to do something like that, then build a garden there or something. Why not? It's a big intersection. Put a garden in the middle of it. Noreen says, back in the 50s, we were subjected to air raid drills. Oh, I was a child in the 50s. Duck and cover. We would get under our desks and put our hands over it. This is for if the Russians drop nuclear bombs on us. Now, the absurdity, of course, of children, being terrorized about nuclear bombs being dropped. And yes, it was terrifying. We also did drills for tornadoes, though, and somehow that was more reassuring because tornadoes did happen, and, it was nice to know what you should do. Nuclear bombs is something else when even kids had seen pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and you saw those mushroom clouds, and you thought, well, I don't think putting my hands over my head is going to help. Yeah, we do. We terrorize children. Since Pittsburgh was an important industrial area, we were targeted as an area to be bombed, so several times a year. Well, Green Bay was too. Everywhere. They did it everywhere. Green Bay, it was a small Pittsburgh. It's an industrial city. Much of the paper products. I mean, if the Russians really wanted to debilitate America, bomb Green Bay, Wisconsin, because the toilet paper wouldn't exist. I mean, you would not have toilet paper. Maureen says several times a year a bell would ring and we had to close all the windows, draw the blinds, and get under our desks. Somehow, that seems so... These kids today know that children are gunned down in school. It's not Russians. It's people here in America. It's much more immediate, much more terrifying. We have a caller. Go ahead, please.
Hello. Hi, Lynn.
Hey.
You're talking about schools. Did you see in Florida one of their solutions is to have 2 combat veterans as guardians of the school with the semi-automatic guns and Glocks? I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd go into school and seeing that a guy standing there with a machine gun wouldn't make me feel good at all.
No.
I mean,
terrifying.
More guns is not the answer.
No.
As they always go to.
We are, we're a ludicrous people. I just want to say.
Yeah.
And what we do to our children is amazing. Just flat out. I can't believe there's not more of an outcry by all these helicopter-y concerned parents about the impact of these drills on their children. I don't know. Are we aware of kids being saved because they were I mean, again, the odds of any one child, ending up, even in our country, in a situation where they have to know, the best way to survive a massacre, are probably pretty low. I don't see why so many children have to be terrorized like this. We're going to terrorize you, children, in case somebody actually tries to terrorize you. We're going to get you ready to be terrorized.
No, another thing, did you see Trump's going to sign that bill?
Yeah.
So he's maybe come to a little bit to his senses
that
he can't win.
No, well.
A little.
No, wait, just wait. Wait for the other shoe to drop. He'll do something outrageous. He has to sign the bill because even he knows he can't live through another shutdown. So, he lost. He lost this. He lost round 1 and he lost round 2. But don't worry, he'll keep coming. He will keep on coming. Yeah. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh. What else we got? I was talking yesterday about how, speaking of Trump, about how if you elect Republicans, what they always do is... Oh, we have another caller. I'm sorry. Caller, go ahead, please.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
In Pittsburgh, they used to call them retention drills, and we were all taken out of our classrooms to the lowest floor of the school, lined up against the wall. We were all sitting in what they called tailor seats, with our feet folded underneath us and our heads in our laps, and told to be as quiet as possible. And that was supposed to be for air raids or
why were you supposed to be quiet?
Bombs dropped.
What? So the pilots couldn't?
I don't know.
You were in there. I mean, what? What?
You think they were going to hear us? a bunch of little
exactly.
kids.
Oh, they just wanted you to not get hysterical, I suppose. What? I know. I went through those too. I mean, just ludicrous. Retention. What the hell does that even mean? That doesn't make any sense.
We didn't know why we were doing it, and it took a long time before somebody spilled the beans and said, "Oh, it's in case
the Russians.
In case we're, the Russians dropped a bomb on us."
Oh dear. Better to tell you it's tornadoes. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, in Pittsburgh, I think we've had one tornado in the city of Pittsburgh.
Where I came from,
in my life,
tornadoes did happen with enough, or the fear of them that they would actually send us running home if they thought it was. I mean, all right, there's a tornado coming. Let the kids out running, and we would be running down the side. I remember once running home. Because there was.
Oh my God! Just so you could get swept up in it, in case.
I don't know. I guess it was bad weather. Who the hell knows? Boy, terrorize children. That's what we do. Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay. Bye. So Republicans come in and they put in place in all the agencies people who do not agree with what the agency has been created for. We've been through this. Yeah, you put polluters in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency. You put oil and gas developers in charge of Interior Department. You put people who are anti-union and want to screw workers in charge of Labor Department. You put people who don't believe in public education in charge of the Education Department. And you'll recall there is something called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and that is a result of Elizabeth Warren's dogged efforts to create this division of government that was there to look after the interests of us, little people, just a way to make sure the banks and other people weren't totally screwing us. Well, that is something Republicans did not want, but somehow it did get through. And now that we have such a thing, by the way, that's one of the things that Mike Mulvaney, I think, is in charge of. Mike Mulvaney holds about 5 positions in the Trump administration, including chief of staff, right? Has he been? I don't know. But the Trump people do not agree at all with the very idea of a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And one of the things they've just done, those payday lenders that prey on poor people who don't have bank accounts, people who are living from paycheck to paycheck, people who are desperate enough that they have to literally go into one of these places and take out a loan to make it till their next payday. And as they take the loan out, they are slapped with these exorbitant interest rates. I mean, the whole business model of these payday lenders should be against the law. They exist solely to make money off of poor people and to entrap poor people. Their idea is that you create a loan that these poor people who desperately needed the loan in the first place, it's not a big loan. Let's say it's $100, whatever it is, something that they had to have and didn't, and slap this exorbitant interest rate on it and tell them they had to pay it back in 2 weeks, which is often the case. And then in 2 weeks, they can't pay it. And so you give them another loan. And then in 2 weeks, they can't pay it. So you give them another loan until all they're doing is paying interest and getting nowhere. A study of the loans made by these people showed that over 60% of the people who were borrowers at these payday lenders had taken out 7 or more loans in a row. proving the business model works. What kind of an evil SOB do you have to be? So, during the Obama administration and with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, there were things put in place that would rein in a little bit of what these sharks could do to poor people. Well, I just have to tell you, of course, not shockingly, the Trump administration has announced it is absolutely gutting those rules to protect the least among us from these vultures. Oy. Oh, my God, it's 11 o'clock. Listen, I just got to tell you one more time that you got to check out the August Wilson Center. I'm serious. And I got to tell you that tomorrow, for a little bit of the show, we're going to have a guy joining us. His real name is Joe, but he goes by Professor Buzzkill. And he has his own podcast, and he will be talking to us about walls, a subject that's in the news. Walls throughout history, whether walls work. He's a teacher, Professor Buzzkill. So we'll get a little more information on walls, the thing that our president, of course, absolutely thinks is the most important thing for the security of the United States, which, of course, is laughable. All right, so that's it. And see you tomorrow, I hope.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.